2 Kings chapters 10 through 12 demonstrates the consequences of obedience and disobedience to God and the importance of righteous leadership. Chapter 10 describes Jehu's zeal in executing God's judgment on the house of Ahab and Baal worship. In chapter 11, Athaliah's reign of terror ends, and Joash becomes king. Chapter 12 recounts Joash's reign and the temple repairs. These chapters highlight the significance of following God wholeheartedly and leadership's impact on a nation's spiritual well-being. They remind us that our actions have consequences and that we should strive to live according to God's standards. As you reflect on these chapters, consider your own commitment to following God. Are there areas in your life where you must demonstrate greater obedience and devotion? Remember that your choices and actions impact those around you, and seek to influence God's kingdom positively. Before we begin to read, consider this question. How can you cultivate a heart entirely devoted to God and His righteousness? Pray with me. Dear God, thank you for the lessons we learn from the kings in 2 Kings. Help us to follow you wholeheartedly and to be a positive influence on others. Now, gracious God, thank you for guiding us through this day. As night falls, grant us peace and rest. Guide us in truth, protect us, and renew our spirits for tomorrow. May we serve you and reflect your love, bringing about positive change in our lives and the lives of those around us. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. 2 Kings chapter 10. Now, Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria. Jehu wrote letters and sent them to Samaria, to the rulers of Jezreel, the elders, and to those who brought up Ahab's sons, saying, Now as soon as this letter comes to you, since your master's sons are with you there are chariots and horses, a fortified city also, and armor. Select the best and fittest of your master's sons, set him on his father's throne, and fight for your master's house. But they were exceedingly afraid and said, Behold, the 2 kings didn't stand before him. How then shall we stand? He who was in charge of the household, he who was over the city, the elders also, and those who brought up the children, sent to Jehu, saying, We are your servants, and we will do all that you ask us. We will not make any man king. Do what is good in your eyes. Then he wrote a letter the second time to them, saying, If you are on my side, and if you will listen to my voice, take the heads of the men who are your master's sons, and come to me to Jezreel by tomorrow this time. Now, the king's 70 sons were with the great men of the city, who brought them up. When the letter came to them, they took the king's sons and killed 70 persons, put their heads in baskets, and sent them to him to Jezreel. When the messenger came and told him, saying, They have brought the heads of the king's sons, he said, Lay them in 2 heaps at the entrance of the gate until the morning. In the morning, he stood and said to everyone, You are righteous. Behold, I conspired against my master and killed him, but who struck all these? Know now that nothing shall fall to the earth of the word of Yahweh, which Yahweh spoke concerning the house of Ahab, for Yahweh has done that which he spoke by his servant Elijah. So Jehu struck all that remained of the house of Ahab in Jezreel, all his great men, his familiar friends, and his priests, until he left him no survivor. He arose and departed and went to Samaria. As he was at the shepherd's shearing house on the way, Jehu met with the brothers of Ahaziah, king of Judah, and said, Who are you? They answered, We are the brothers of Ahaziah. We are going down to greet the children of the king and the children of the queen. He said, Take them alive. They took them alive and killed them at the pit of the shearing house, even 42 men. He didn't leave any of them. When he had departed from there, he met Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, who was coming to meet him. He greeted him and said, "Is your heart right, as my heart is with your heart?" Jehonadab answered, "It is." "If it is, give me your hand." He gave him his hand, and he took him up to him into the chariot. He said, "Come with me, and see my zeal for Yahweh." So they made him ride in his chariot. When he came to Samaria, he struck all who remained at Ahab in Samaria until he destroyed him, according to the word of Yahweh, which he spoke to Elijah. Jehu gathered all the people together and said to them, "Ahab served Baal a little, but Jehu will serve him much. Now therefore call to me all the prophets of Baal, all his worshippers, and all his priests. Let none be absent, for I have a great sacrifice to do to Baal. Whoever is absent won't live." But Jehu did it in subtlety, with the intent that he might destroy the worshippers of Baal. Jehu said, "Sanctify a solemn assembly for Baal." They proclaimed it. Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshippers of Baal came, so that no man was left who didn't come. They went into the house of Baal, and the home of Baal was filled from one end to another. He said to him, who was over the vestry, "Bring out robes for all the worshippers of Baal." He brought robes out to them. Jehu went, and Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, into the house of Baal. And he said to the worshippers of Baal, "Search and look, that there are here with you none of the servants of Yahweh, but the worshippers of Baal only." When they went in to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings, Jehu appointed 80 men outside and said, "If any of the men whom I bring into your hands escape, he who lets him go, his life shall be for the life of him." As soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, Jehu said to the guard and the captains, "Go in and kill them. Let none come out." They struck them with the sword's edge, and the guard and the captains cast them out and went to the city of the house of Baal. They brought out the pillars in the Baal's house and burned them. They broke down the pillar of Baal and broke down the house of Baal, and made it a latrine to this day. Thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. However, from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, Jehu didn't depart, that is, the golden calves in Bethel and Dan. Yahweh said to Jehu, "Because you have done well in executing that which is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab according to all that was in my heart, your children of the 4th generation shall sit on the throne of Israel." But Jehu took no heed to walk in the law of Yahweh, the God of Israel, with all his heart. He didn't depart from the sins of Jeroboam, which he made Israel sin. In those days, Yahweh began to cut off parts of Israel, and Hazael struck them in all the borders of Israel. From the Jordan eastward, all the land of Gilead, the Gadites, the Reubenites, and the Manassites, from Aroer, which is by the river Arnon, even Gilead and Bashan. 2 Kings chapter 11. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal seed. But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's sons who were slain, even he and his nurse. And they hid him in the bedroom from Athaliah, so that he was not slain. He was with her, hidden in Yahweh's house for 6 years, while Athaliah reigned over the land. In the 7th year, Jehoiada sent and fetched the captains over hundreds of the Karites and of the guard, and brought them to him into Yahweh's house. He made a covenant with them, took an oath of them in Yahweh's house, and showed them the king's son. He commanded them, saying, "This is the thing that you shall do. A third part of you, who come in on the Sabbath, shall be keepers of the watch of the king's house. A third part shall be at the gate Sur, and a third part at the gate behind the guard. So you shall keep the watch of the house, and be a barrier. The 2 companies of you, even all who go out on the Sabbath, shall keep the watch of Yahweh's house around the king. You shall surround the king, every man with his weapons in his hand. He who comes within the ranks, let him be slain. Be with the king when he goes out and comes in." The captains over hundreds did according to all that Jehoiada the priest commanded. They each took his men, those who were to come in on the Sabbath, with those who were to go out on the Sabbath, and came to Jehoiada the priest. The priest delivered to the captains hundreds of spears and shields that had been King David's, which were in Yahweh's house. The guard stood, every man with his weapons in his hand, from the right side of the house to the left side, along with the altar and the house, around the king. Then he brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, and gave him the testimony. They made him king and anointed him. They clapped their hands and said, "Long live the king." When Athaliah heard the noise of the guard and the people, she came to the people and went into Yahweh's house. She looked, and behold, the king stood by the pillar, as the custom was, and the captains and the trumpeters by the king, and all the people of the land rejoiced and blew trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her clothes and cried, "Treason! Treason!" Jehoiada the priest commanded the captains of hundreds who were set over the army, and said to them, "Bring her out between the ranks. Whoever follows her, let him be slain with the sword." For the priest said, "Don't let her be slain in Yahweh's house." They made way for her, and she went by the way of the horses' entry to the king's house. There she was slain. Jehoiada made a covenant between Yahweh and the king and the people that they should be Yahweh's people, and between the king and the people. All the people of the land went to the house of Baal and broke it down. They broke his altars and his images thoroughly, and slew Matan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. The priest appointed officers over Yahweh's house. He took the captains of hundreds, the Carites, the guard, and all the people of the land, and they brought down the king from Yahweh's house, and came by way of the guard's gate to the king's house. He sat on the throne of the kings. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet. They had slain Athaliah with the sword at the king's house. Jehoash was 7 years old when he began to reign. 2 Kings, chapter 12. Jehoash began to reign in the 7th year of Jehu, and he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zebiah of Beersheba. Jehoash did what was right in Yahweh's eyes all his days, during which Jehoiada the priest instructed him. However, the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places. Jehoash said to the priests, "All the money of the holy things that is brought into Yahweh's house, in current money, the money of the persons for whom each man is evaluated, and all the money that it comes into any man's heart to bring into Yahweh's house, let the priests take it to them, each man from his money donor, and they shall repair the damage to the house, wherever any damage is found." But it was so that in the 23rd year of King Jehoash, the priests had not repaired the damage to the house. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada, the priest, and the other priests, and said to them, "Why don't you repair the damage to the house? Therefore take no more money from your money donors, but deliver it for the damage to the house." The priests agreed that they would take no more money from the people or repair the house's damage. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest and bored a hole in its lid and set it beside the altar on the right side as one comes into Yahweh's house. And the priests who kept the threshold put therein all the money that was brought into Yahweh's house. It was so, when they saw that there was so much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put it up in bags and counted the money that was found in Yahweh's house. They gave the money that was weighed into the hands of those who did the work and oversaw Yahweh's house. They paid it out to the carpenters and builders who worked on Yahweh's house, and the masons and stone cutters for buying timber and cutting stone to repair the damage to Yahweh's house, and for all that was laid out for the house to repair it. However, there were not made for Yahweh's house cups of silver, snuffers, basins, trumpets, any vessels of gold or vessels of silver from the money that was brought into Yahweh's house, for they gave that to those who did the work, and repaired Yahweh's house with it. Moreover, they didn't demand an accounting from the men into whose hands they delivered the money to give to those who did the work, for they dealt faithfully. The money for the trespass offerings and the money for the sin offerings were not brought into Yahweh's house. It was the priests. Then Hazael, king of Syria, went up and fought against Gath and took it, and Hazael set his face to go up to Jerusalem. Jehoash, king of Judah, took all the holy things that Jehoshaphat and Jehoram and Ahaziah, his fathers, kings of Judah, had dedicated. His own holy things and all the gold were found in the treasures of Yahweh's house, and the king's house sent it to Hazael, king of Syria, and he left Jerusalem.